discussions about different aspects of family life that have changed in the many years. And so I ask that you pray for the bishops and for the lay people who are involved in this synod, that somehow the wisdom of the Spirit come to them. And they will see how somehow laws are not absolute, but that somehow they can be reinterpreted. It has always been that way. And so we pray that somehow the bishops of the world, as they unite, come together and seek the wisdom of the Spirit. They were bringing little children to Jesus that he might touch them. Little children, symbol of the most helpless in the time of Jesus. The most helpless. We could spin off in many directions with this gospel. There are so many in our society so helpless. Consider, for example, those suffering from addiction or from mental illness in one kind or another. In our time, they come to Jesus through us. And we are to respond with care and understanding. So does Jesus send us to follow his example of compassion, acceptance, and love. Archbishop Schaumburg, in a recent letter, enlightens us. He reminds us that 1 in 4 of us lives with an addiction or mental health challenge, perhaps our own or in our families. Mental illnesses are so common that few families are untouched by them. And sadly, understanding and support and acceptance are not yet as common as the disorders themselves. Mental health issues, including addictions, are treatable and manageable, but not without great cost. Cost especially for those who provide care. And it calls for true holiness. There are two people I know very well, one who is now an adult woman, but I've known her since she was a little girl, and one of the members of my family, and they both have autistic children. And I say to them frequently, you are my heroes. You are the people who day after day and year after year have loved and cared for these children. God has not asked me to do such a thing, but somehow in the midst of the unfolding of life, this is what you are asked to do, and you do it. And in my mind, this is what true holiness is all about. But the stigma persists, and 2/3 of those suffering in these ways do not receive proper treatment. The effects of stigma and discrimination are profound: low self-esteem, isolation, hopelessness. And so many in our society are unwilling to shoulder the cost for the care and treatment of people who are among our families and friends and co-workers. Community, true community, calls for carrying another's burden. Many years ago, I would go to North Chicago Veterans Hospital to visit my brother. And frequently, I would see this orderly, just an ordinary kind of a person. And he would be singing and jiving and sometimes playing cards and sometimes just talking with one or a few of the patients. And he may not know it, but he was creating an environment of understanding and acceptance. And one time I came upon him and he was poring over the sacred scriptures. So was he grounded in what the Lord said. Whatever you do for the least of my brothers or sisters, you do for me. I don't know what his denomination was. He probably was a Baptist. But this man caught it. He was a disciple who echoed the way of the Lord. So how can we, in very real ways, respond to those who are suffering from addiction or mental illness? First of all, to have the deep conviction that all are embraced in our family, the community of faith. And we believe in prayer, that somehow in ways we cannot fathom, God hears the cry of everyone who pours out his or her heart to God. And so we should pray for those not only who have the suffering of the illness, but also for their families. That somehow God give them the grace to stay faithful and caring, generous and self-giving. When possible, we can stop and listen and affirm our common humanity as we offer our time and our care. And we can affirm families who day after day lovingly care for, embrace the sufferings of one of their family members. And we open our hearts when we pressure politicians to provide the necessary funds for treatment. It's easy to talk a good game, but somehow to truly live in community means that we open not only our hearts and our minds, but we open our purses to somehow be willing to share the cost. You know, only the very rich can provide the care necessary for people who suffer from mental illnesses. None of us can. Even some people who have rather good incomes cannot. It's a community problem, and therefore it should be a community care. Community does not come at bargain prices. When Pope Francis noticed a little boy suffering from a disabling illness, he stopped the motorbike aid, and he went to that little boy, and he cradled his face in his hands and he kissed his forehead. The Pope touched our hearts as he reached out to that boy, and we applaud. Good. But more is asked of us. We, no more than the Pope, are to follow the way of Jesus. Whenever or wherever we meet one of our brothers or sisters bearing the pain of addiction or mental illness.